Hello freediving family! Today we're going to talk about the sinuses, sinus issues and how to deal with these sinuses. If you've ever been diving and felt any pressure on your face, above your eyes, below your eyes, then you have experienced a sinus issue and you're going to want to watch this video. If you guys are new here, then make sure you subscribe. Every now and again I do put out a good video, so subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss any videos. So what are your sinuses and why is it that they can make your face feel like it's going to implode sometimes when you're diving? Why is it that your friends can dive up and down all day without any issues, but after a few dives or after half a day of diving, you have to get out of the water because you can no longer equalize your sinuses? Sinuses are hollow cavities in your skull, and doctors don't really know why we have them, but they do humidify the air before it reaches your lungs, and they are lined with a mucus producing membrane so that the mucus that gets produced there will drip down through your nasal cavity and then into your stomach. So our sinuses aren't huge airways, and usually when we do equalize our ears, we've put enough pressure on our nasal cavity to equalize our sinuses, but there are also other things that can hinder the air from moving in and out of our sinuses. And I'm going to split these issues up into two different categories: temporary issues and then chronic or permanent issues. Also, I do need to apologize. I did intend to put this video out a few days ago,
but I may have stolen him from you all.
She stole me for the weekend, so what can I do? Our sinuses produce mucus. If we do have an illness that will cause our body to produce even more mucus, like a cold or a flu, then often what will happen is we'll be producing so much mucus that our sinuses will get blocked up and we won't be able to equalize them as we descend or as we ascend. You can feel the mucus building up in your sinuses as well. It feels heavy, and you can especially feel it when you lean forward. You feel it like heavy in your head. Also, when we're sick, the tissues in our sinuses can become inflamed and they can swell. The opening to our sinuses from our nasal cavity isn't very big, so it really doesn't take much for them to swell shut. Now, if you need to dive, there are ways to get around mucus, but there are no ways to get around swelling, especially because where there is swelling, there will be mucus. If you do ever feel any pressure in your sinuses as you're diving, then please stop, turn around, go back to the surface. If you do keep descending, then what's going to happen is the air inside your sinuses will keep compressing, and eventually it's going to get to the point where something's just got to give, and you'll end up bursting a blood vessel in your sinuses. This is what happens when divers come up to the surface or they take their mask off and they're bleeding out of their nose. I really do recommend just resting, staying out of the water, not diving if you are congested, because it can lead to a whole array of problems. But I will go through a few things that will help speed up the recovery process and clear the mucus out. If you do burst a blood vessel in your sinuses, then you need one thing: rest. There's no real way to speed up the recovery process. You simply need to let it heal. You just need to stay out of the water and rest until it's fully healed, and that can take anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks. If you start diving before it's fully healed, then most likely you'll just reopen the wound, make it worse, and probably even start to develop scarring inside your sinuses. Sinuses with scarring in them are tricky to equalize, and you will have turned a temporary problem into a permanent one. So, if we do have lots of mucus in our sinuses and we want to speed up the recovery process, what can we do? There are 3 things that I'm going to propose. But before I jump into it, I do just want to say that blockages in the upper sinuses above the eyebrows are much trickier to get rid of than blockages in the lower sinuses below the eyes or like in and around the cheekbones. To clear blocked sinuses, we can steam our sinuses. This is when you put boiling water into a bowl. You put your head over the bowl and you cover your head with a towel and you inhale all that steam through your nose. And then just cover your face. Breathe deep through the nose. Ooh, it's very hot. The hot steam will help break down, dislodge, and loosen the mucus. This is even more effective if you put some eucalyptus oil or lavender oil in the water. Steaming your sinuses is probably the best thing you can do to help clear blockages in your upper sinuses. The next thing we can do is a sinus flush or a sinus rinse. A sinus flush or rinse is when you run saline or water through your nasal cavity and through your sinuses. You can buy specially made pots for this called neti pots. Or from a chemist, you can pick up special containers and special sinus flushing salts, which you can use to do these sinus flushes. Just don't use cold water or seawater for it. Cold water will just close up your sinuses, and the salt in seawater will agitate the sensitive tissues in your sinuses. Also, there's a very good chance that your body will not be accustomed to the bacteria in salt water, and so the infection, or seawater, so the risk of infection is incredibly high. There is actually quite a lot of information out there on how to flush your sinuses, and so personally I would prefer that you go to your doctor or you go to your local chemist, and they can probably give you better directions for how to do this depending on what country that you're in. But I'm also going to include a link in the description below to a video that's more detailed on sinus flushes and will be able to help you guys more. But I will also demonstrate how to do it, just so you guys can have a laugh at my expense. I'm going to just use this bottle. Now the important part of the positioning here is that you make sure that you get your head completely sideways, so that the water can go in through one nostril and then come out the other nostril. And then, whenever you're ready, you just let the water drip through. Really important that when you do this at the end, you don't put one hand on either nostril, just let it come out. Guys, I really didn't even do that properly. I don't like doing it, it's not my favorite thing. Just make sure when you do it, you don't put one hand on each nostril and blow, because that will just blow the water that's in your nasal cavity into your actual middle ear through your eustachian tube. And also, when you do this, make sure that your mouth is open, because if your mouth is closed, then it will limit the water from flowing through from one nostril out the other. So open mouth, and don't put one hand on the fingers, just blow the water out. Oh, that was gross. I think a bit of snot just came out. The issue though with sinus flushing is that it can only really reach the mucus in your lower sinuses. The water just never goes up into the upper sinuses. Certainly not if the mucus up there is compacted and blocked up.
The other thing that can really help is exercise. Run, work out, sweat.
Baby, what are you doing?
Nothing.
Let me know in the comments if you think I'm punching above my weight. Okay, the more blood that you have pumping around your head, the better, and the increase in temperature will help break down and dislodge that mucus. Please don't take any cold or flu tablets, because while in the short term they can reduce inflammation, your body very quickly develops a dependence on them, and it won't take long until you find yourself in a position where you can't dive without taking them. But natural anti-inflammatories like ginger tea are fantastic. My personal remedy for clearing blocked sinuses is to drink way too much ginger tea. Just ginger and hot water. Then I go for a long run. When I come home, I rinse my sinuses and then I steam them. Hit them from every angle. Something I want to touch on quickly as well is that even if you do have healthy sinuses, if you're diving and you don't equalize your mask, then what happens is it starts to suck onto your face, and that pressure can also burst a blood vessel in your sinuses. Also, if you're underwater and you have a large contraction, it can often force us to inhale sharply, and then we suck the mask on our face and again burst a blood vessel in our sinuses, or even burst blood vessels in our eyes and come up with bloodshot eyes. Okay, that's it for all the temporary issues, but before I move on, I do just want to say that in so many areas of freediving, the studies just have not been done for us to know exactly, with certainty, what is going on in the body. So if things are not scientifically proven, we refer to them as bro science, by which I mean, yeah, bro, like, I think this might be going on because I feel like this when I dive. These things aren't often written down. Most of the information that I give you guys comes from my own experiences. But just so you know, I am an expert in broology and a major contributor to the Encyclopedia Britannica. Actually, I do want to find a term that doesn't exclude women. I was thinking of bra science, because it's kind of like bro, but it's a mention of a bra. But I think it might be better if you guys recommend to me a better term in the comments, because I don't know what I'm doing. Something that includes all of the sexes, please. Now for chronic or permanent issues. If you have burst your sinuses and they didn't heal properly, then you can develop scarring. Now, your sinuses aren't very large airways, and so little lumps of scarring can have a big impact in there and can stop the airflow from moving in or out easily. So if you ever do burst a blood vessel in your sinuses, if you ever do come up from a dive and you take your mask off and there's blood coming out of your nose, just rest. Just rest. So many tradespeople or people who work or live in dusty environments or environments where there's a lot of like particles and smoke in the air have a really hard time equalizing their sinuses because that dust and those particles do clog up your sinuses. They clog up your sinuses and they create blockages, and then it's really difficult to equalize them when we're diving. So you could like quit your job or move somewhere else. I don't know, it depends how important diving is for you. This also happens if you do have allergies, but antihistamines can be very helpful for this. I really don't want to talk about medications or pharmaceuticals for dealing with problematic sinuses like anti-inflammatories, cold and flus, antihistamines. I mean, obviously if your doctor prescribes you these things, then go for it, but for just general management of tricky sinuses or difficult sinuses, I don't recommend just taking them. But if you do have allergies and you have been prescribed certain medications for them, then go for it. Some of us are just unlucky enough to have sinuses or nasal cavities that are just shaped in a way that is hard to equalize. The shape of our sinuses or nasal cavities aren't conducive for it, or we have a deviated septum. If you do have a deviated septum, which is a displacement of your nasal septum or the middle part of your nasal cavity, then you're gonna have a really hard time equalizing your sinuses and equalizing your ears as well. In the more extreme cases, there are actually surgeries to fix these things, but please talk to your doctor about that and not me. Because while I am an expert in broology, I am just not qualified to give out medical advice. This also goes for people with polyps or other sinus conditions which stop them from being able to equalize their sinuses. But basically, don't dive when you're congested and you'll make your life a whole lot easier. And if you do burst a blood vessel, then just stop diving. I've really loved seeing some of the more experienced freedivers answering a lot of the questions in the comments of these videos and helping out their fellow freedivers. Please continue to do so because we are a family. In this video, I'm not going to actually be answering all of the comments. I would like the more experienced divers to continue taking over that role and answer some of the questions in these comments. I'm going to read all the comments, I'm going to go through them all, and I'll answer questions where I feel like I need to, but I'd like to see you guys having a proactive role in this community that we're creating together. If you're new here and this video was helpful, then subscribe and ring that bell. If you want to help me create a stronger global freediving community, then share the video around. Make sure your dive buddies see it. I'll see you in the water somewhere. I'm Adam Stern, I hold my breath and dive really deep.